So imagine this, you've got just 6 weeks to the MSRA. The clock is ticking, you're wondering where to start from, you've got tons of ground to cover, you're feeling a bit overwhelmed. I hope that's not you, but if that is you, I'm glad you're here to watch this video because that's exactly why I created this. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the exact study strategy I will use if I had just 6 weeks to get ready. This strategy will be focused, efficient, and designed to ensure that you're able to get your best possible score. We will break everything down week by week, covering the essential study materials, study tips, just general exam hacks. Whether you're starting late or you've got tons of other commitments that limit the amount of time you have to prepare for the exam, this video is exactly for you. It will ensure that you leave here feeling confident to tackle the exam with the limited time you've got. But before we jump right in, please like this video, subscribe if you haven't, and leave any comments or questions you've got in the comment section. Hello everyone, welcome. I'm glad you clicked on this video. For those who are new here, my name is Maro. I'm a medical doctor based in the UK. And following the last MSRA exam where I had a score of over 600, I got tons of emails and messages asking about my study tips. And so I've created a couple of videos where I share about how to tackle the MSRA exam and land an offer-worthy score. So with regards to this video where we will be exploring how to prepare for the exam in 6 weeks, let's jump right in. So week 1 is all about laying the groundwork. Here's what I'll focus on. Firstly, I want to understand the exam format, especially if I haven't written this exam before. So I'll focus on exploring what the different sections of the exam are, what they test, how they are tested, how the questions are presented in the exams, and how they are scored. For example, I'll try to understand what the professional dilemmas is about. We know that it's all about testing ethical scenarios, your commitment to professionalism, how you cope with pressure, your understanding and your ability to display empathy and sensitivity towards your colleagues, straight confidentiality as you relate with patients, and all of that stuff. Then the clinical problem solving skills is about your understanding of clinical symptoms and signs and how you're able to synthesize the information you've gotten from clinical case in order to arrive at a diagnosis based on the investigation results provided or the examination findings provided, and your understanding of the treatment plans and all of that. Yeah. Secondly, I want to gather my resources. So I will search out and register for a reputable question bank, 1 or 2 at most. Personally, I use Samson and Past Medicine, which were very helpful for me. It might be different for you. There are so many other very good question banks, MCQ Bank, eMedica, and the others. Once I've honed in on the question banks I would like to use, then I'll download the Good Medical Practice Guidelines. The PDF is just under 30 pages, something you can go over at least once at the start of this 6 weeks period, right? Remember, this is like your Bible for the professional dilemmas section of the exam. So back to the clinical problem solving section, there are some reference materials that are also helpful, like the NICE guidelines, the Oxford Handbook of Clinical Medicine. These can just be like adjunct materials you can make reference to whenever you come across any questionable question in the question banks or any questionable explanation you come across in the question banks. So it's good to just have this on the side. Then thirdly, I will create a study schedule. What do I mean by this? With a time period of preparation of 6 weeks, I would aim for 2 to 4 hours daily. No, scratch that. 6 weeks is limited time. I'll aim for 4 hours daily during the weekdays and even longer blocks of hours during the weekends or on days where I'm either off work or like bank holidays and stuff like that. I'll break down these hours into the different sections of the exam. So let me make this more practical for you. For example, during the week, I will commit 2 hours of study in the morning. I'll wake up 4 a.m., study till 6 a.m., then go ahead with the rest of my day. Then in the evenings, I can commit another 2 hours. So when I've come back from work or whatever other commitment I have during the day, I can devote between 8 and 10 in the evening, another 2 hours to studying. The morning session will be dedicated to the professional dilemmas, for example, while the evening for clinical problem solving skills. This can be switched up depending on your mood or depending on your preferences. So this is not a blanket rule. This just ensures that there's structure and there's a form of accountability and consistency in your study plan. Remember that you are not limited to just these blocks of hours during the day. In my previous video, I mentioned how to make use of the extra pockets of time you have during the course of your day. learning on the go, on the bus, during your work breaks, while you're waiting in the reception for whatever it might be, just making use of any free time you've got during the course of the day. 6 weeks is not a long time. So you want to squeeze out as much time from each day that you have, right? Secondly, I'll write down the goals for each week. For example, for week 1, I'll give myself a target of 500 questions to cover in both the clinical and the professional dilemma sections. If I choose to answer 100 questions a day for week 1, that already has given me about 700 questions covered, which is solid. How will I do this? For example, the morning study session, which I said is reserved for the professional dilemmas, I can do about 20 questions. In the evening, I can do 60 questions of the clinical problem solving skills. During the course of the day, whenever I've got some free chance, I can get another 20 questions of the clinicals or professional dilemma, whichever one is more convenient for you, to just cover during the course of the day. I've already locked in 100 questions in one day. You got your weekend. The weekends, like I mentioned, you should have longer blocks of study hours. So if during the weekday I'm doing 4 hours, weekends I can get 6 hours per day. Saturday, 2 hours in the morning, 2 hours in the afternoon, 2 hours in the evening. Sunday, the same thing. And I'm able to cover even more questions. So can be looking at 700 to 800 questions a week, just week 1. This requires a lot of devotion. You have to just look in your mind and say that, Charlie, this thing, I'm getting it done. There's no other way around it. The competition is high. The stakes are high. I need a good score. And this will require a lot of sacrifice and commitment. Now that you've set the foundation, weeks 2 to 4 is all about building and maintaining momentum, right? This is where the magic happens. These 3 weeks are all about consistency and ensuring you set up a system of accountability for yourself. So here's how I'll tackle it. Number 1, daily question practice. I've already established the 100 questions per day format. After the first and the second weeks, I should be able to start building momentum and actually covering more questions as I get more familiar with the kind of questions that are set, with the case scenarios and how they are presented, and with the explanations. Secondly, it's important that you remember not to rush through. So even though you're giving yourself a target of 100 questions per day, and you feel the pressure of covering this within the limited time you have, remember, it's not just about quantity, quality over quantity always. So you want to go through the explanations very carefully. You want to go through the explanation of every question carefully. I mentioned every because we may be tempted to go over the explanations of only the questions that we got wrong. But it's also important that you understand the explanations of the questions you got right. You don't want to work based on rote memory because, to be very, very honest, you come across questions that are completely new in the exam, and it will be the understanding of the concepts that you've gained during your preparation period that will be able to help you answer the unfamiliar questions that you will come across. So you want to gain good understanding of each question, each concept, each specialty, category, type, and all of that very thoroughly so that you don't feel stranded on the exam day. Next, you want to develop a review system. So as you're answering the questions, it's important that you flag the tricky ones because you come across tricky questions. You flag the ones that you got wrong or that you got confused by. You flag the explanations that you did not really understand so that you can go over other resources to try and get better explanations. So when I mention other resources, I'm talking about YouTube channels that explain certain concepts better, for example, arrhythmias or whatever else that you're having trouble understanding. Other resources like a study group. For example, if you're on a WhatsApp or Telegram group, you can quickly just put a question that you're not so clear with and then able to get better answers or better explanations from your colleagues. These kinds of tricky questions and topics, you want to create like a kind of spreadsheet to track my performance on these areas as time goes on. As part of this review system, I'll also want to develop like a list of certain weak areas that I notice, right? So if I'm struggling with dermatology and rheumatology, I want to take note of these topics and explore them from time to time. And this might mean spending some extra time on them compared to the general stuff that I already know. Another very important point within this next couple of weeks, that's weeks 2 to 4, is to ensure that I start my mocks early. So by the end of week 2, the plan is to start doing timed mini mocks. Mini mocks because we don't want to spend the early periods doing the entire number of questions that you will encounter in the exam day. So probably 60 questions, 30 professional dilemmas, 30 clinicals, or 30 professional dilemmas, 50 clinicals, just something rough like that. just so that you can now start familiarizing yourself with the way the exam questions are presented in a mixed format. So you can choose to do this twice a week. I would advise twice a week, mini mocks twice a week. Timed, no interruptions, focused. So this ensures that you're able to develop your time management skills and you're able to build stamina for the main exam. So lastly, for this 3 weeks, you want to supplement your knowledge. For the clinical problem solving section, you want to hone in on the high yield topics: cardiology, acute coronary syndrome, arrhythmias and their management, neurology, stroke management and all of that, pharmacology, drug interactions, side effects. You really want to explore and understand these high yield topics very well. Remember, these weeks that you're studying for your clinical problem solving section, ensure that you're studying them specialty by specialty, please. This will make sure that the information you're getting is consolidated. Like I mentioned in my previous video, everything is not jumbled up in your mind, and you're able to set up a system in your brain that makes it very easy to retrieve the information when you need it in the exam setting, okay? So remember, study by specialty in this initial week. In this period, you want to take note of all the clinchers. You want to take note of some key phrases, some words that act as spot diagnosis, but you also want to be very thorough. But you want to train yourself to be able to recognize certain patterns and notice certain differences. For example, if you are asked what is the initial investigation to do in a given scenario, you want to be able to differentiate that from what is the most appropriate investigation, or what is the initial treatment you will give if a person comes in with so and so condition, versus what is the definitive treatment you would give for so and so situation. So those little differences you also want to really take note of and train your mind to recognize quickly. So week 5 is all about refining and strengthening your weak spots, your weak areas. By now, you should have been able to start picking up certain areas that you're struggling with, certain topics that you're not very comfortable or confident with in both the clinicals and the SJTs. So here's the plan. Number 1, target your weak areas. Go through your flagged questions and understand the reasoning behind the explanations that were given for each answer. Go over the questions that you got wrong. There are some question banks that have that feature. Past Medicine, for example. I'm not an ambassador or an official endorser of Past Medicine, but I really did like it. That's why I keep mentioning it. Anyway, so they have that feature where you're able to go over questions you've got wrong in the past. So it's very helpful to go over those questions, because there's something the brain does where you've got a question wrong, you've read the explanation, you seem to understand what has been explained, but when you come across the question a second time, you're confused. You don't know whether the answer is the one you gave the last time, or it was the answer that was presented as right by the question bank. So to avoid this confusion, it's very important to go over those kinds of tricky questions as much as possible. You want to use additional resources like I mentioned as well, YouTube, study groups, NICE guidelines, Oxford handbook, blah, blah, blah. Secondly, practice close call SJT questions. What do I mean by close call SJT questions? There are some SJT scenarios where a particular answer is given depending on the study material you're using. Oxford, for example, you're using Oxford Handbook of Clinical SJTs. Some answers are given. You come across a similar question in another chapter, and it appears like they're contradictory. The answers given in this one contradicts the answers you saw in the previous question, and you're wondering what the difference might be. Those kind of questions should be intently and thoroughly looked at. The explanation should be thoroughly understood. If you're having trouble understanding them, make use of your additional resources, from your study groups to your GMC Good Medical Practice Guidelines. Make sure you understand these, because you will definitely come across scenarios like that where you might have conflicting ideas of how best to approach them. So week 5 is all about things like this: close call questions, your weak areas. Thirdly, you want to take a full length mock. I know I mentioned that you should do mini mocks at least 2 times a week, more if you can. You can do up to 3 times a week, like from weeks 2 to 4. But week 5, you want to start focusing on full length exam type mocks. So in the middle of the week, you can choose to do 2 full-length mocks. This is week 5. This will help to fine-tune your pacing and help you to identify any lingering issues that might still be around. Remember, the goal here is not perfection, it is progress. So keep reviewing and don't let the mistakes you make to demoralize you. Initially, the mocks you might be doing, your scores might be low. You might be getting 50%, 60%. Don't let that discourage you. That's how it is for everybody. The more progress you make as you do more mock and you gain better understanding of the different topics and concepts, it becomes easier for you to get higher scores as time progresses. So please don't be discouraged. Keep going. Remember that each mistake you notice and each question that you got wrong, for which you have reviewed the answers, you are better equipped to approach it in the future when you come across that question. So don't let it discourage you. Let it actually encourage you to know that you're actually making progress. So you've made it to week 6, the final countdown. You got 7 days to your exam. You're wondering where all the time has gone. You're wondering if you're ready to finally sit this exam. Well, I just want to let you know that yes, you've put in all the efforts that you can. You've worked hard. You've gotten to this point. This is the final stretch. The aim of this final week is not cramming, it's consolidation. So you want to consolidate all the information you've acquired over the past couple of weeks. And this is how I would spend this final week. I'll review my notes. I'll go through the questions that I flagged, the things that I jotted down, the explanations that I probably noted down while I was preparing over the past 5 weeks. Just go through those summaries and all of that. Then I'll practice selectively. What do I mean by practice selectively? I'll select a couple of sets of new questions from the question banks that I'm using. Obviously, if you're studying for 6 weeks, it might be a bit difficult to complete all the questions in the question banks that you'll be using. So in this final week, I'll just like to go through some brand new questions that I've not come across in the past. This just helps to keep my brain fresh and ensure that when I go to the exam setting and I come across new questions, I'm not taken aback. My brain is still able to think quickly on its feet, given new scenarios. Then I'll simulate the exam environment. I'll take one last full mock, the exact 170 minutes in a noise-free environment, create the setting like the exam setting, just to program my mind for the final exam. This will help me get comfortable with the timing, with the format and everything. Then the day before the exam, I will avoid heavy studying. This is the time to rest. The exam is very tasking on the brain. So you want to ensure that you are very well rested. You're not anxious. You're not stressed. You've had a good night's sleep. You've prepared everything ready for the following day. So you've got your identification documents ready, whatever outfit you're wearing, you got it all down. You already know the venue or where you're going. You've planned your commute and all of that so that you're not stressed on the day of the exam. You can just review light materials, like glance through your reference guides, like the good medical practice guidelines. Just go over it one more time. Any small notes you've made in the course of your preparation, just some light study. You don't really have to do anything intense. Take time to rest and know that you've got this. So that brings me to the end of this video. This is how I would study if I had 6 weeks to the MSRA. It's all about focused effort, smart use of resources, and building confidence over time through consistent practice and commitment to the goals that I've set out for my study. If you're starting late, please don't stress. Remember that this exam rewards consistency and a clear approach, not cramming and rote memorization. So I did mention study groups as one of the helpful additional resources that you can use in the course of your study preparation. So I'll advise that if indeed you benefit from study groups, do not exceed an average of 2 to 3 study group sessions in a week. For me, like I said, this video is how I would prepare for the MSRA if I had 6 weeks, right? So everyone has their opinion. If I had the option of actually using a study group, and if I was compelled to actually use one, I wouldn't be in a study group that will require us to meet every day. At most 2 days a week, 2 days of maybe 2 hours study per day, online or whatever format you want to do the studies. That should be fine, because sometimes the back and forth from study groups can be quite time consuming. If I'm going to be in a study group, in addition to meeting a maximum of 2 times a week, another way that I feel a study group would be beneficial to me and to the other members of the group would be if we had a platform where we shared questions that we found tricky during our personal time of study. So if you come across a question that the explanation is questionable, you're not very convinced about how it was approached in the question bank, then we can post it on a group, discuss our ideas, and arrive at a conclusive answer that will benefit all of us. So that's my advice on how to use study groups for an exam like the MSRA. For PLAB 2 or other kinds of OSCE exams, of course, you can meet every day. Those study groups are very beneficial for exams with such formats, but not for like written exams. I don't know. That's my personal opinion anyway. But yeah, then I did mention that you can target a number of 100 questions a day, in essence, covering up to 700 questions in a week. This might not be possible for a couple of people, and that is very understandable. Like I said, this is how I would study for the exam if I had 6 weeks. I believe that with concentration and focus, the average candidate for the exam should be able to cover up to 30 questions, professional dynamic questions in a day, and an average of 50 to 70 clinical questions a day. If that's not possible for you, then it means you may need to devote a lot more hours per day of study. Instead of the 4 hours that I initially suggested, you might need to put in a lot more hours to cover more grounds. The truth is, the exam is very broad and the grounds to cover is a demanding exam. Let's just be honest. So the whole essence of what I'm saying is that this will require a lot of sacrifice. So I created a free study guide. Some of you may know about it, for the MSRA exam. And in it, there's a copy of a sample study schedule, which I wrote. It's very explanatory, it's comprehensive, and I think it will be helpful for anyone preparing for the exam. So you find a link to the study guide in the description box. In the study guide, I mentioned that really, I don't think anyone should use less than 2 months to prepare for the MSRA. But if for any reason things happen and sometimes things may not go as planned, you have less than 2 months. That's the reason why I created this video. These are practical steps you can use. So these things that are doable that I'm recommending is doable. It's doable. It just requires a lot of sacrifice and focus and a lot of devotion. It's not easy, but it's doable. It's very, very doable. Please, I just want you to be able to get it into your mind that you can do this. This exam can be conquered. I know I've used that word a lot, but yeah, you can get the best possible score that you desire. Just put in the work. Trust God. You'll be fine. My favorite scripture, the horse is made ready for the day of battle, but victory belongs to the Lord. Diligence, there's no excuse for it. There's no place. You can pray all you want. Prayer is very important, but the work needs to be put in, and God will bless your efforts with good success. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I'll be putting out similar content in the near future. If you've got any questions, any queries, please put them in the comment section. You can email me. My email is in my channel description. Please like the video if you benefited from it. Share with others who you think will benefit from it. And subscribe if you already haven't. I wish you all the best as you prepare. And I hope to see you in the next video. Bye.